My name is Keith Cameron. I'm an amateur radio operator. My call sign is Kilo Charlie 1 Alpha Tango Tango. In this video, I'm going to share some information about amateur radio logbooks, how they're used and which ones to select, and QSO mapping, which is a particular interest of mine. A QSO is a contact an amateur radio operator makes with another operator, and that is recorded in a logbook. QSO mapping is a way of creating a geo map with all of your contacts noted on that map and color coded. So we're going to see how that works. In the remainder of the video, I'm going to cover 6 topics. The first topic is to log or not to log. Why do you want to log, and what purposes do the logs serve? Second topic is if you decide to log your QSO contacts, how do you choose a logbook? And really, logbooks plural, because you're probably going to need more than one. Next, I'm going to discuss contesting and logbooks. That's a very specific area of amateur radio operation and requires some thought about how you're going to prepare your logbooks and which software you're going to use. The fourth topic is managing logbooks. We're going to see we're probably going to need more than one logbook. So how do you keep all those logbooks in synchronization? How do you report your information accurately? Because we're going to see there's a need to share it with other operators. Finally, we're going to discuss QSO mapping. And to get an accurate QSO map, we need accurate location information that describes the QTH or location of the other operator we contacted. So how do we go about getting that accurate information into our logbook? And then we're going to create a QSO map and show you how to go about doing that. If you're new to amateur radio, you're going to have to answer the question of whether you want to log your contacts or not. Prior to the 1980s, the Federal Communications Commission required U.S. operators to log their operations, including all contacts. That's no longer required. That requirement was dropped back in the 80s. So why would I want to go to all that trouble if I don't have to legally? Well, you're going to find that it's expected of you to be part of this community. You are now part of a community as an amateur radio operator. You're going to make contacts with others in the community, and they're going to want to exchange acknowledgments called QSOs. Those acknowledgments can be done either by cards sent in the mail or electronically, and I'll describe some of the ways that's done through logbooks. That's going to be an expectation of you. You also will need the logs for contesting and awards. Any contest you enter will have certain rules around what information has to be in your log and the rules for how you operate. It's important that you follow those if you want to participate in the contest, not only for you but for the other operators, because your logs are going to be needed to verify their contacts if they're competing in that contest. So those other operators expect it. Moreover, operators don't always appreciate it if you make multiple contacts with the same operator. They're usually looking for new contacts, particularly in a contest and sometimes in day-to-day operation. So what information needs to go into a log? There's no one answer to that question. The ARRL, the American Radio Relay League, has some recommendations. Outline those in red. So your information in the log would include your call sign, frequency, mode, and power, and a number of other data elements depending on what mode you're using. The contact information, that is the information of the other operator that you've had the QSO with, should include call sign, the time of start and the time of end, the signal strength report, the name of the other operator, and their location, called a QTH. This varies quite a bit depending on what kind of mode you're using, because there's a lot of other information that can be included in the log. Finally, contest logs are in a specific file format that is created by your logging software called Cabrillo. It's Cabrillo formatted, And that information is context specific. You can't use a general purpose log for that. Typical data items that are included in a log entry in a contest or frequency mode, it may include name and section, which is your QTH in a broad sense, the class, that is how many transmitters you have in operation, and other items such as sequence numbers, but that again is context specific. Having decided to log our contacts, we have to answer the question, which log books do I need, plural, because I'm probably going to need more than one. There are three categories of logbooks, and I'm going to describe them as web-hosted logbooks. Those are ones that are hosted in the cloud or on the internet, and PC logbooks, which are local logbooks that are maintained on your computer. There are two categories of PC logbooks: everyday logbooks and contesting logbooks. Everyday logbooks are going to be your first decision to make. There are quite a number of them out there. Ham Radio Deluxe Log is a very popular one. 40M is a popular one. DX Lab Suite is a more sophisticated one that you pay for. Most of these are free or have a free version. Logger 32 and N1MM Plus is designed for contesting, but it can also be used as an everyday log. Contesting has very specific requirements, and that's why you don't tend to see a logbook operating as both an everyday log and a contesting log. You're generally going to want to use separate logbooks. N1MM Plus is the one I use because my amateur radio club uses it, and once I adopted that, it came naturally to me and it's quite easy to use. Others that are out there are WriteLog, KLog, FDlog, and so forth listed here. So you're going to have to decide on an everyday log. A contesting log you can put off until you get into contesting. And then you're probably going to want a web-hosted logbook. A web-hosted logbook is a way of sharing contact information. QSL cards that you mail back and forth are a time-honored way and a nice way to share information about the other person you contacted. But a lot of operators today don't want the expense of mailing those back and forth. They find it much easier to use an electronic QSL, an electronic logbook that's web-hosted. The most popular of these is QRZ.com, and I've listed them in order of popularity. It has about 500,000 registered users, and it's used by operators all over the world to look up other operators, but it also has a logbook function. The most popular logging function for sharing QSL is probably eqsl.cc. It has over 300,000 registered users, and it's used by the international crowd as well as the North American operators. Logbook of the World is the logbook that's operated under the auspices of the ARRL, so a lot of North American operators use Logbook of the World. hamqth.com is a free logbook. All of these others you have to pay an annual fee for. hamqth you do not. Finally, there's a logbook, clublog.org. It serves a specific community. It's primarily for CW operators, DX operators use that. It's got about 60,000 registered users. In making these choices of these three logbooks, what are the questions I need to answer? The first question is the software compatible with my computer? And that question really applies to your everyday log and your contesting log. If you run a Mac or a Linux computer, you're going to have fewer choices than if you run Microsoft Windows. However, there are still logbooks out there that run on those other two operating systems. The second most important question is, will the logbook support my transceiver? You may have started the hobby with an older transceiver such as the ICOM 735 here, and so you need to make sure that whatever software you're going to load on your computer is compatible with that particular transceiver. You want to use what's called a rig control or a CAT interface between your transceiver and your computer, so that when you make a contact, you will automatically populate your log with the track frequency, that's the frequency you're on, the mode, and the power, and possibly other items depending on the software and the sophistication of your transceiver. That's a great benefit because you don't have to write all that down or type all that into your logbook as you move between contacts. CAT stands for Computer Assisted Transceiver Software. A lot of this software was designed to enable new modes to old receivers. ICOM 735 did not accommodate a lot of digital modes. The digital modes are actually operated using software like Ham Radio Deluxe, WSJTX for FT8, FT4, JT65, and others, and FLDigi for modes like PSK. So these software packages that are really used for CAT, Computer Assisted Transceiver, also have certain logbooks that they're compatible with, and so you need to check that. Then you need to decide which of these web-hosted logbooks you want to use. You probably will find yourself using multiple ones of them if you are a serious operator, and you do that not because you need to put your logs on all these different platforms, but because other operators may only have one of those platforms and they're trying to get awards in recognition. The only way they can authenticate their QSOs is by you populating your QSO on the same website, and that will become an authentication for the contact and help them get their awards. There's some tools that are available from some of these websites like QRZ, EQSL, Logbook of the World, and HamQTH in particular, as well as ClubLog, and that is real-time logging. When you have a contact and you report it into your logbook, that is, you put it in your logbook, some of these sites have what is called an XML interface, and they will go out to the databases and retrieve information like name and QTH. A lot of the modes we operate in don't give precise QTH information or name in some cases, and you'll be able to get that information and populate your log with that additional information. The final question to ask when you look at these logs is what fields are supported. That is, what information is contained in a contact. And surprisingly, there's no standard for that. There's a wide range of information, and usually everyday logs follow what's called an ADIF format, which I'll describe later. But the amount of information that is contained in a log entry varies dramatically depending on which logbook you are looking at. So you want to see which fields are supported and whether or not you're comfortable with that. So let's compare a contest log with an everyday log. I'm a retired communications engineer with software background, and I couldn't find a good tool to look at different log files, so I wrote one, and it's called QSO Log Viewer. I'll describe later how to get a copy of that if you'd like to. I've loaded two different files into QSO Log Viewer. The first is from a contest I participated in March, and that's the North American Single Sideband Sprint contest. I used N1MM as my logging software, and these are the specific fields that are required for that particular contest. You can see the call sign of the other contact, information like the state they're from, the mode, their name, and sequence numbers. So those are specific requirements, and that is what N1MM recorded. It was sent to the contest manager using a Cabrillo format. That compares with my everyday log, which is Ham Radio Deluxe Logbook. This is a representation of an ADIF file I loaded from Ham Radio Deluxe Logbook into QSO Log Viewer. We can see there are a lot more fields, and they're different than the ones that are in the contest. If you go into QSO Log Viewer and you actually look at the available fields, Ham Radio Deluxe has 60 or more different fields that can be recorded in a particular log entry. And not so with N1MM for this particular contest. It's limited to what you see here. So we see quite a bit of difference between what's in an everyday log and what's in a contest log. Here's a recap of what we've discussed on contesting logbooks. Contesting logbooks are specific software, and they must support the specific contest format that's specified by the contest manager. So you need to take care to ensure you do that. Also, make sure you read all of the rules of the contest and you operate in accordance with those rules. This is all important because if you're a participant in a contest, then your log is going to be used to verify not only your own results, but the results of the other operators that you had a QSO with. So they're not going to be very happy if you can't confirm their QSO, because it may affect their standing in the contest. Be careful about that. There are multiple ways to prepare a log for a contest. ARRL says paper logs are okay for all the contests that they support directly. That means you can record it on paper. So I've shown my ICOM 735 here, and the operator is going to have a form specific to that contest, and as they make a QSO, they're going to record all that information on paper. This assumes there's no rig control in this particular example. Once you've completed the contest and you have all your QSOs recorded in your log, you have two choices. You can mail or send via facsimile the handwritten log. That's okay, but you can imagine that the contest managers are going to have to spend some time with your paper copy deciphering it and verifying against all the other logs they have to manage. But if you have a PC, there's a better way to do that, and you just open your browser to this URL and you'll get a web form that's compatible with that specific contest, and you have to select it from a list that's on that website. Then you can take your paper records and input them directly into that website, and the website will generate a Cabrillo file that can then be uploaded to the contest robot. The contest robot is a piece of software running in the internet, and it will take your Cabrillo file and check it for accuracy and put it in the database with the other records. Another way, and a way I prefer, is to use contest logging software such as the N1MM program I've mentioned previously. Plenty of other programs out there, but that's one that works well. You can use your rig control during the course of the contest, and as you make different contacts, that frequency information and mode information will be automatically recorded into your N1MM log form, and then you just have to add some additional information such as the call sign of your contact and perhaps sequence numbers or class and section. Once you've completed the contest, then N1MM will create a Cabrillo formatted file that's compatible with that contest. You can then upload that file to the robot, and again, it will verify the accuracy and the conformance of your file to that specific contest. So I prefer this, and I think most operators use something like this. Many operators end up with multiple log sites, a couple of different log books on their PC, and multiple websites that they use in the course of their operation. So how do we go about managing all of those different logbooks? The logbooks, as mentioned earlier, have different schemas. That is, they have different fields, and there's not one definition of which fields are in all these logbooks. Two common formats for files, a Cabrillo and ADIF, are used. ADIF has some standard definition around fields, so that's a common format we can use to compare information among the different logbooks. Once you've completed a contest and you've sent your Cabrillo file to the contest manager, you probably want to take those QSOs and put them in your everyday log and possibly on the different websites that you use as well. To do that, you need to use your contest logging software and create a ADIF file that you can import into your everyday log, and you can also upload to your various websites. You're going to find these logbooks get out of synchronization, and one of the reasons is, particularly with the web-hosted logbooks, that QSO corrections are made, and they have to be made in the multiple databases. Duplications occur in one way when other operators submit their QSOs, and there's a difference between their QSO as they recorded it and what you recorded. It may be because your or their clock was wrong, or there's something wrong with the frequency, or some other aspect of the QSO. So you want to correct that, and when you correct it, now you've got to go correct all the other logbooks and databases. Finally, foreign operators may not be in QRZ, so sometimes it's difficult to find all the information you need. When the logbooks get out of sync, I could not find an easy way of comparing the log files to find out which records were different and being able to easily resolve that. So I wrote an application, and that application is called QSO Log Viewer. I'll describe how to get that later. And that's a tool that's written in Java, so it runs on any platform that has a Java runtime environment, and it can compare ADIF files from the various logbooks. Now let's take a look at the diagram. So here I've got my 735, I've got a rig control to my PC where I'm creating my everyday log and my contest logs. The way you'll tend to update most of your websites like QRZ and HamQTH is you'll export a ADIF file and then you will load that into that website. The websites, as I mentioned, these two in particular have an XML interface, so there's a two-way exchange. When you're logging your QSOs, if you have the XML service, it's free on HamQTH, it's $30 a year on QRZ, then your logging software, if it has that feature, will get name and QTH information automatically. So there's a two-way exchange here. ADIF files and records are going to be uploaded, and QTH and name information is going to be downloaded. QRZ and Logbook of the World in particular have a mechanism where they can share XML interfaces as well, so when you update one, you can update the other, provided you are an XML subscriber and you have loaded the proper security information into QRZ. ADIF file format is really the lingua franca of logbooks, so it's the common way of sharing information among the various logbooks. So now I'm going to talk about QSO mapping. To build a correct map, we need correct QTH information from all our contacts. The QTH information is in the form of a grid square. Grid square is an algorithm or a format that was invented by John Morris, G4ANB, back in the 80s and was adopted by the amateur radio community. The grid squares have sequences of pairs. There's an alpha pair followed by a numeric pair followed by an alpha pair and so forth. You can have as few as 2 pairs in the QTH information, or as many as 5 pairs or more, the standard doesn't restrict. 2-pair grid squares, that is 4 characters, have a substantial error. I've plotted my QTH here in Texas against the center of the grid square of EM10, and we find there's a 50-mile error, which is typical. If I use a 3-pair or 6-character grid square, then that error drops to 3 miles. So there's an order of magnitude improvement if I can get 3-pair or 6-character grid square information in my log file. Note that FT8, which is a very popular mode, only provides 4-character or 2-pair information. So what we want to do is find a way to get from 4 characters to 6 characters. And I'm going to show you how to do that. You can upgrade your grid information using the utility I've written called QSO Log Viewer. I'll tell you how to get that later. In this example, I've used QSO Log Viewer to load an ADIF file out of my HRD logbook. And now I'm going to go through that log file and upgrade all the grid square information to 6 characters. The examination of that file shows that I've got 541 records with 3-pair. I've got a number without any grid information, and then quite a few with just 4 characters. I need to have an XML subscription with one of these sites, either HamQTH, which is free, or QRZ, which is $30 a year. And then I simply select upgrade to 6 characters. I enter my user ID and password for that site, and then I just hit update records. QSO Log Viewer will go through the file and exchange information with the website and retrieve 6-character grid information and put it into the file. Having upgraded the grid square information, we're ready to map our QSOs. This is taken from my website, radiocheck.us, under the QSO Maps tab. I've written it using open source software called OpenLayers. You begin by entering your QTH. That's not necessary if you don't want to do it, but here I've entered mine as a default, and that's where I live in Texas. I've exported the file from my Ham Radio Deluxe logbook, and so now I'm going to choose that file and upload it to the website. There it's loading. It's finished loading. It has about 2,500 QSOs in it. So you're going to get this notification. It tells you by QSO type how many have been loaded. If there are any errors, there's an error file created. Once I click on the map, there's no QSOs displayed, and that's because I can select by mode which QSOs I want to look at. So if I want to look at the PSK QSOs, I click that, and the PSK QSOs pop up. Same is true for phone. And if I want to see all modes, I simply click on the All Modes button and they all show up. I can look across the world, and here we see the contacts I've had in Asia. I can zoom in as you would with Google Maps or a similar mapping program. And I live in Texas, but I often go to California and visit the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. So if I want to see who in the Bay Area I've had QSOs with, I can zoom in on that, and we see around Oakland there's quite a few, and Stockton and so forth. So here I'm zooming into that. The other feature is I can click on a particular QSO and we'll get the call signs and information from that QSO, but we also get a QRZ button that appears above. It's in red. You can click on that and it'll take you directly to the QRZ page that has that operator, and you can get details off of that. You get a little more if you're already logged in to QRZ. So that is how the map works, very simply. It's very intuitive, I hope. You can clear all modes with the Clear Map button. Here's some resources you may find useful. There's a Wikipedia page on contesting software. ARRL has a good article on how to submit electronic contest logs. Both SourceForge and GitHub have free logging software, but there's a lot of logging software that's not listed there. You'll just have to search on the subject of logging software ham in your favorite search engine. There are other good QSO maps out there. Two that I found are listed here. One is by K2DSL. It does have a limitation, less than 1,000 QSOs. Second one is QSOmap.org. You're going to need to register to use that site. And then finally there's mine, which I've listed the URL here. There's no QSO limit. It'll handle 20,000 QSOs quite well. If you're going to go well above that, you may have to wait a while for it to load. There's no registration, and my site does not load any of your data into my website. It's all processed locally on your PC. It's a client-side processing, so I don't save any information about your QSOs, your QTH, or anything else. Finally, Log Viewer, the utility I wrote, is available on GitHub at this URL, and I'll be preparing a video that explains how to use that later. There is a detailed help file that is part of the application, and it uses actually a page on my website.